Welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast, episode 101. Am I going to start doing that now? Maybe. You never know. Until I start forgetting which episode we're on. But anyway, I know it's 101 because our last episode was 100. And tonight is a very special recording night because it is King's Day, 12th night, Joan of Arc's birthday, the start of carnival season. Thou can't eat king cake. Middle of F the Falcons week. So anyway, but yes, so it is now carnival time, as they say. So happy carnival, guys.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. That's all good. You know, it's funny because I actually met Al Carnival Time Johnson. It was at Satchmo Fest, and it was when they had
officially.
It was when they had Satchmo Fest down in Jackson Square, and had no idea who it was. Brittany and I are just sitting there, and these people just sit down where we were at the same table, and we're just talking, and somebody goes, "This is Al Carnival Time Johnson." I was like, "Holy God!" You know, so I'm Mr. Oblivious. But anyway, how are you guys?
That is its official name.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So anyway, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing okay?
Doing pretty good. I did get my first bout of king cake at Coludas that I picked up over at Tapardo's today. So
we got
one
ours.
King cake down.
We got ours from Adrian's. We live only like 2 blocks from Adrian's in Gentilly. So,
Yo, Adrian.
Yeah, if you live out of area, that is the local superstition that you cannot and should not partake in king cake prior to 12th night.
It causes hurricanes and Saints losses and COVID and all sorts of things. So
yeah, it causes everything bad.
Everything bad is if you eat king cake before or outside of carnival season, we should say. So anyway, well, tonight we're going to be tackling the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 2. Many Banthas died to bring you this episode. How's that for a reference, guys? And I think actually we should lead with Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi saying, "This is not going to go how you think." But we'll talk about we're all going to do a little watch together and just talk about the episode as it goes along. So, but first we got to do some trivia. But as you're listening to trivia, if you want to queue up Disney Plus, and we've just said, skip the intro and skip the recap, and then you'll see Jabba's palace, and that's where we'll start. But first, some trivia. So, Fredo, what Toydarian merchant... Oh, we might as well just stop right there. Name another Toydarian merchant besides the one that the answer of this question is. What Toydarian merchant doesn't fall for Qui-Gon Jinn's Jedi mind tricks?
Watto.
Can you do it in the offensive voice?
The answer is Watto. Toydarian, Republic credits. I don't take the.
I'm a Toydarian. Yeah, that's right.
I'm a Toydarian. Only money. There's just no. I mean, geez, come on, George. Anyway, moving on.
It was like I don't. That is interesting that the Phantom Menace was just full of those. It's like It's like if I know that we're in 2022 and we're a lot more woke than we were. I mean, it's like I watch Friends every now and again, and how problematic Friends is through the lens that we look through today. But yeah, Star Wars, like who thought that? Yeah, that's a good idea to use that accent. Anyway, Dave, who thrills the Ewoks with campfire tales about the rebels' exploits? Another softball.
Yes, indeed. C-3PO.
It is C-3PO. I'm not even going to look at the back of the card to confirm because I know that's right. All right. Well,
I did like that, though, because in A New Hope, he says, "I'm not very good at telling stories."
Nope, some people call that a plot hole, Dave.
They paid
You
that
call
off.
it character development.
Character development, yes.
All right. So for me, who characterizes the Galactic Senate as having no civility, only politics? Oh, that's interesting. I got the toughest one. Who characterizes the Galactic Senate as having no civility, only politics. I'm actually going to say Palpatine. I'm right. It was Palpatine because that sounds like, something a shady politician would say.
That was when he was
Shady Sheev.
he was wormtailing Padme to vote for the no confidence.
That's right. That's right. Um, cool. All right. So let's, before we hit play on this, last week I said one word, and my word was underwhelmed. I will tell you, I've moved up to whelmed.
You're with Fredo now.
I'm now whelmed. Where let's just general reactions when you saw this. Like I said, just the Cliff's Notes, the abstract. Fredo.
Well, I say, yeah, I'm gonna go with whelmed because it's going right along where I thought the story was gonna go, and from the first chapter to this one, it just flowed seamlessly, and so you're like, yep, we're catching exactly what we're gonna catch, even though there were a few beats that kind of surprised. So I'm still saying whelmed, but the bar's been raised up a little bit.
Dave.
I'm gonna say appreciative because I'm not sure. We're gonna get into this, but I'm not sure there are a lot of stories in mainstream media that tell these kinds of stories.
Like I said, first of all, in watching some people who really, like I said last week, they get paid to, do a dissertation on every episode that's released on something, and I mean there are references to Lawrence of Arabia. It's also, basically a retelling of the westward movement in the United States and how the railroad was a problem for the indigenous peoples of this land. So there's a lot of heavy stuff going on in here, and all the while Boba Fett is gaining, like I said, you're learning about how he went from where he was in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi to where he is now. But I just sit here and I just get nervous because I know we only got 6 episodes, and I was like, really? We're going to spend an entire episode chasing a train? Okay. I mean, I have to pull myself back and say, let's look at the whole thing. Don't cast judgment. So like I said, I've moved up to whelmed. With that, let's just hit play on the count of 3, and 1, 2, 3, play.
I was gonna say as we're loading it up and it's coming, just to kind of play off of what you said regarding uh, trains and native peoples and everything. It's like we forget that the birth of Star Wars is a space western.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the idea of taking the space western and flipping it on its side and looking at a different angle on that story is a great idea.
I will say they've done such a good job at recreating these environments. It's the people, they've put a lot of love into this. Just, it looks like Jabba's palace from 1983.
Yeah.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
it's-
1980,
I
I
was
was
going to
gonna,
agree.
yeah, and I was going to say 1983. We should commend Return of the Jedi got added to the National Film Registry.
Right
So
on.
True.
we're saving it. Yep.
So the assassin, we hear the only Huttese swear word that anybody knows, Ichuta. So you
How rude.
can decide what that means on your own. But they're trying to get him to talk. I like that 8D8 is in this too. I like that they used the torture droid as his kind of, I don't know, Greek chorus, if you will. But all right, so be honest. When he gets dropped into the Rancor pit coming up here, did you think we were going to see a Rancor? Were you hoping? Did you get at the edge of your chair? I did a little bit.
I was wondering if they were gonna pull out a Rancor just because, it's such a big iconic moment of Return of the Jedi. But at the same time, I was like, no, because they want him to talk, they don't want him dead.
Right.
So
Right.
throwing him off by hinting that there's a Rancor, it's the perfect play there. But
Yeah,
I
like
did wonder. Mhm.
I was gonna say, my brain raced ahead in that manner. It's like, if there is an actual Rancor down here, how are they going to ensure that he survives long enough to tell them what they want? And so that sort of eliminated the possibility for me. I thought it was a bluff.
But at the same time, I did wonder, did Bib get a new Rancor? Because we know where Jabba got his Rancor now.
Well,
We know
that
they're
was
not easy
one
to
of them.
get.
That's the big controversy is that, the one we saw in Bad Batch,
Bad
that is
Batch.
not the same name as the one from Return of the Jedi. So he had, and of course, what Ming Na Wen, Fennec Shan says, Jabba's menagerie. So, I mean, it stands to reason that there were multiple Rancor. Um,
Hmm.
Rancor or Rancors or Rankai. Um,
Can I
th-
say too, while we're on the topic of her performance, that I really liked her in this particular episode. I think she's been great in this character since
Man,
the
you are
beginning.
you are not a net nerd then because people have come after her on her performance.
I thought she was great.
Yeah.
She's nailing the character, and what I love is she's presenting more of the traditional bounty hunter slash assassin slash member of the underworld point of view, which is necessary and needed in order to show the growth and difference in Boba Fett's character. Like if she was just, doing something different, it wouldn't work. I think you need her to be saying you need to be carrying a litter. You should have so many bodyguards. You should be saying killing all these guys. Doing the standard, this is the way things are done kind of thing. Whereas Boba's like, no, I'm going a different way, and you're gonna see why.
I like how they get into, like, if you walked into any city hall, it's like, no, you're not on the schedule. Fill out these forms.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, again, it's just, our silence is kind of saying it's a kind of slow moving start. I mean, even though we've
Mhm.
already dropped a guy in a rancor pit, and by the way, there was a lot of Trandosians in the streets. I keep waiting for
Mhm.
Bosk, and they just keep teasing us. There's no Bosk yet. But
Do you think we'll see him before it's all said and done?
boy, if I was a betting man, I'd say this thing's going to kick into high gear with
Hmm.
all sorts of these cameos, like come like next episode or something. But I just have a feeling that next time we're going to be like the Donner Party or something. I don't know. I feel like we're on Oregon Trail right now. Um, the
Well, the reason I bring it up is because Boss does have background with Boba
Yeah,
Fett. We
no,
saw
I
him in the
don't. I
Clone
don't.
Wars.
It would make total sense. Um,
Hmm.
The events of this show would hint that he's going to have more attempts on his life in the
yeah,
very near future. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that we get more Bosk.
and
Hmm.
the mayor is obviously very corrupt. I thought that
Hmm.
this was a really this was kind of like Al Capone talking um, with an alderman or something like it just was um, you never really think about how corrupt governments the governments were on Tatooine. You never thought about governments on Tatooine, but anyway, um,
Hmm. Well, one of the things that the prequels did establish is that Tatooine was controlled by the Hutts. So we know that, and we've known that for that ever since Jabba was gone. Now that Bib's been controlled, you always wondered, did that mean that Bib was serving under the Hutts or what?
well, also it makes you wonder. I mean, this is obviously post the Empire falling, so
Mhm.
everybody. I mean, how much of what the mayor was getting was going to the Emperor, and so now it's like now it's time for me to get mine, and Boba Fett's saying now it's time for me to get mine. So you know we know that this is obviously okay. So the way this episode plays out, because eventually we're going to see Pikes, we've got Huts, We've got, a corrupt mayor. We are setting up for, Timmy and the Battle of the Underworld, the Lords of the Underworld. It's like we're gonna have all these factions, going at each other.
Right. Which is one of the interesting dynamics. We didn't, I mean, you would expect because Tatooine is so far out, it's controlled by the Hutts, that the fall of the Empire wouldn't necessarily have impacted them as much as it would, say, Coruscant or another one of the core worlds. So in some ways, this might be the more, immediate act of rebellion happening here, where Boba Fett's coming in to overthrow the Hutts in a way.
So what's Jessica Biel's deal? Where's her character? Is she just why is she stuck in the middle here? This is interesting to me.
Well, you see her genuine discomfort at him being there, so she felt like she had to share the news if he didn't have it yet, and or he was already aware of the news, and it was going to be just a really awkward situation where he might confront her over the situation. So, I mean, clearly she's trying to operate a business. At this stage of things, she's just caught in the middle. There may be more there, but for now, that's all the information that we have.
Now, I gotta say, this moment that is coming up now, this made me giddy. This made me giddy when we go out and we see. I was like, literally, I just went, Hutts. And they were, and I don't mean
the moment right after that is even better, in my opinion.
But they're good looking. I mean, it's like the love that they put into this show, because I mean that was a huge criticism of when they put Jabba in, the New Hope special editions and stuff like that. These look almost like puppet Jabbas, but they're CG, and I love how the platform they have him on is bending in the middle.
The litter. But it goes to the point that everybody's been asking, whether it's Fennec or Jennifer Beals or the mayor. They're expecting the daimyo of Tatooine, of Mos Espa, to show up like this. This is the pomp and circumstance that comes with being the lord of, crime lord of this area. And he's breaking all that, so it doesn't immediately engender the apprehension that everybody got around them.
Yeah, here's the contrast to, how he chooses to conduct himself is just this. This is how it's traditionally done, and so now you're being faced with it. And they are in a position of authority just in a physical way here. Mm-hmm. They are looking down at him. And
the trappings of it can bestow upon them all that power and authority.
So
he's not gotten.
Sorry, I've got to interrupt because I have to give our listeners some background if you were confused as to who this Wookiee was. There are deep cuts in this episode, kids.
This Wookiee is a bad A.
This Wookiee Amazing. Comes from the comics. It was in Darth Vader comics, was in Dr. Aphra. Name is Chrysantan, I think. But anyway, he is
Chrysanthemum?
Yeah, he's a mercenary, ex-gladiator. He actually, I think he and Boba Fett worked together on a couple things. But the interesting thing here is that in the comic, he kidnaps, I think it's in the Darth Vader comic, he kidnaps Owen Lars. And so then Obi-Wan fights him to free Owen Lars and actually wounds Chrysantan. And you notice he's got like a little gash over his right eye, and that's like from Obi-Wan's lightsaber. So are we going to see, are we going to repurpose the Wookiee for the Obi-Wan series, coming up? But anyway, that was pretty deep cut, because when you see this, it's like, who's this Wookiee? That's like, and it was obvious that I know you, you know me. So dang it, it's forcing all of us to go diving into Google and, dive in buying comics and everything. But
By the way, one interesting thought that I had as I'm rewatching it, yeah, the death set right there is
He's
like,
such a
we're
good
gonna
looking
have to go
character
at one
too.
another. Yeah. But one interesting thought that, you know, we got the assassins attacking Boba and Fennec in chapter one. And the assassin tells us it was the mayor who sent me. You know it's not the Huts. Why did the mayor send assassins to take out Boba Fett?
Well, the other interesting question is Fennec Shan says, if you want to kill him, you're going to have to get permission.
Right. It's a lot like the mafia.
Who do they
Where
got to get permission from?
Hmm.
usually within the mafia, you gotta go above, somebody higher. It's somebody's a made man, so to speak. You can't touch them, otherwise they're all gonna come after you. So
And
if you're
see,
gonna go after them,
so now here we are at my criticism before Dave gets to he looks like he's going to say something very smart. So I'm going to say just my complaint real quick.
Okay.
Here's where it was like I thought this episode was going to like kick it into high gear, and then we should have Luke Skywalker saying this is not going to go how you think, because now we're going back into flashbacks and we're back with the Tuskens. That being said, I like the story that's told with the Tuskens here, but it really kind of sent us into, like a hard left. But anyway, Dave, you were going to say?
I was going to say one brief thing that I feel like I saw in the background of the scene that we just left. The couple that are being harassed by the bandits later in this episode.
Oh, maybe
And
maybe they
that
were.
that may be a situation where they come into play later on.
Another deep cut.
Mm-hmm.
Really big deep cut.
mhm.
But I love this. I love everything about all of this. I talked about this last week, which is that I think um, we don't acknowledge enough what this country was built on in a lot of ways. And one of them is the uh, the fact that we took the land from the people that were here first. And I don't know if I went back and I thought about it some, and I said like, well, are there really good examples of taking the point of view of um, of the people that were here first and showing us their culture and sharing with us their viewpoint and helping us to understand, um, why they had not only just a claim to the land that they were on, but also that their way of life had meaning and value. In that, um, I think when you just sort of try to pave that over and not even stop to recognize that, you're doing a tremendous disservice to yourself and everyone around you. And so I get back to thinking about it. It's like, well, in pop culture, do we see a lot of examples of this? And we do not. Um, and we have a ton of examples, like we talked about last week, of the opposite, the Cowboys and the Indians, and
Yeah.
you know, we're gonna shoot them and or win the West and all this rah rah Americanism.
By
Um,
by the way, I'm
but
going to interrupt you here real quick, because
yeah,
when this happened, my wife said they did not just kill a bantha.
they did in fact.
I did-
It is
And
it
it's
is
not the only one in this episode.
they're big targets, Aaron. Okay, I mean, to be fair, they're just very large. They're easy to hit.
Yes, they had under. No, and that's one of the interesting things because at first you're like, why are these people? Because you don't know who they are at this point. Why are they shooting at the Tuskens? Why are they shooting at the Banthas?
No,
And
my question is,
there's a
where'd the
reason for
big
it.
train come from? That was on Tatooine. I was like, what the? And then I was like, wow, okay, but yes, you're right. But why are they shooting? Yeah, it's but
And it's the reputation of the Tuskens. It's their understanding of the desert and what they're doing. So,
but again,
but they don't. But it gets to as Dave was saying, the examples from real life history, the stories of people on trains taking out their hunting rifles and shooting dead untold number of bison
right?
across the Western Plains.
And yeah, just taking over people's lands, so we could
Hmm.
get a train that went from coast
East
to
to west.
coast.
Yeah.
So
I want to say too, like there's the possibility that when you do this sort of thing, when you pull from real life examples in a fantasy world, that it can become a little forced. Oh, it's too close to what is real life. Like the diner in Attack of the Clones is one for me that just sort of was like, really, we're doing the diner thing, So like there are examples where it just doesn't work. Um,
Mhm.
but I think I prefer this idea of going backwards instead of trying to go forwards. Like, we're going to predict the future, everyone, and it's going to be a desolate planet that's been ravaged by time, and it's going to be post apocalyptic, and humanity will have destroyed itself, and we're going to see the worst of humanity. There's something about Star Wars' approach. Again, and they say it in the opening crawl a long time ago.
Mhm.
Um, they pull from history, and they're trying to take these lessons from history, and there's kind of there's just something a little more optimistic about that to me
Mhm.
than what you get in from like sci-fi as a general rule, and I appreciate that about it.
I think the difficulty sometimes with science fiction, particularly when it's trying to project towards the future, is that it can be quite easy to either be overly saccharine, overly, oh, we're all kumbayaing at the end, or overly negative, we just destroy ourselves. And I think one of the things that they're trying to get at here is that we're not either angel or devil all the time. I mean, even in this instance, Boba Fett's going out there on a mission. We don't know what the mission is. He said he's going to stop the train. We don't know how,
and
but we also know that he's coming at it from a point of view that's not the Jedi's point of view either.
well, we got to talk about this real quick because, folks, this is another huge deep cut here. We are in Tashi Station. That is the place that Luke was going to go get some power converters, and actually, they recreated this based on the. Go watch your deleted scenes from on the Blu-ray, and they recreated this thing perfectly, and that is Cammy and Fixer, Luke's friends.
Looks,
The one Cameo was the one that took the binoculars from him to look for the Star Destroyer, and Fixer was her boyfriend. And in the credits, they are literally Cammy and Fixer. So I mean that is such a nerdy deep cut. That was it could have been just any hut. And actually you're watching this, you get the idea of what's going on. But the fact that it's in Tashi Station, I mean, that is kind of cool. And they're actually, it makes me feel like Star Wars is now starting to get into some of that Marvel sensibility where the story is okay, even if you still get the story, even if you don't get the deep cut, you know?
right, because when I watched it, I had no idea. So therefore, it plays fine for me as to, hey, there's this couple, they're getting bullied. These are the guys who we know are killers, so they'll have no compunction about hurting them. And in the middle of them, here comes Boba Fett, and he's gonna wreck shop. So if you had no idea who Cammy or Fixer were, it does not detract from your enjoyment of what you're seeing.
And they didn't have a lame
However,
joke like after he gets done beating everybody. And by the way, a crotch hit always works in any galaxy. Um, but at the end of it, he could have said something goofy like, "Do you have any power converters?"
Oh God.
no need.
Yeah, they went wah, wah. But so they want to do these deep cuts, but they obviously that's I mean that's an obvious joke they could have done to you know make people realize where they were, but just leaving it the way it
Mhm.
is, like you're saying, Fredo, it works. But then once you realize what it is, it works on a totally different level.
Well, and the other thing is we know Boba Fett's never been a character of lots of being verbose. Making a joke at that moment would not have been his style, even as we're seeing him change. He's
So,
not the joking. He's not Deadpool.
so the okay, so we can do some character analysis here. He went
Mhm.
after the bandits that he'd seen previously. He went after them specifically because he didn't have any sort of moral um, conflict about taking their speeders. These are bad
Mhm.
guys. I'm going to take their speeders. And
He needs the speeders. They have them. If he takes them out, nobody's coming after him, and he can feel good about cleaning out some of the bad guys out the way.
yeah, so I think like the motivation there is it's like why did we see that scene last week? Well, that obviously that was setting this up.
Mhm.
Well, it's also talking about even let's not make him in to be a saint just yet. There is an honor there is an honor amongst thieves. I mean, there is a code. You know, it's interesting in talking with well, like Brittany has said, her students have spoken openly about, like there's a code that you don't bring your fight, like your gunfight to the school. You don't, you have it in certain. There's the like I said, there's just it's kind of like in Hawkeye, you know,
Mhm.
um, Yelena's beef was with Cliff. It wasn't with
With
um,
Clint.
Clint. It wasn't with sorry, yeah, it was with Clint. It wasn't with Kate Bishop. You know,
Mhm.
she had to fight Kate because she was in the way, where she could have just very easily just killed her and then
Killed her.
moved on. So, like I said, I think we got to be careful not to make, and I don't think you were doing that, Dave. I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, people are trying to make Boba Fett now into this hero. And
No.
I think, like I said,
There's progression.
yeah.
Is the point. It's like he's not Luke Skywalker, but he's developing and changing. And I really like. I saw somebody make the comment. It's like, well, how does this work so far as a companion piece to Mandalorian? Um, and in Mandalorian, you're dealing with a good person who's trying to do bad acts, and in here, you're dealing with a bad person who's trying to do good acts. And it's kind of like, yeah, their paths are very different, and they're sort of
Well,
crisscrossing in opposite directions.
well, what you're finding interest, what I'm finding interesting is we're seeing. We know that there's a reason why Boba Fett is forging a different path as he's trying to assume the role of crime boss of Mos Espa. Because he's not going the way that Fennec Shen's telling him to go. He's not going the way that anybody on Mos Espa expected him to go, like the way everybody else would do it. So there's got to be some kind of explanation as to why he's going a different way. This has given us that. This has given us the growth and the development that happened, to him in order for him to go.
But I
I
see
can
it.
do this, but I can do it differently.
But I see it from a little different perspective here. That I see he's in a situation that he can't get
Mm-hmm.
out of. So he's got to somehow earn the respect of his captors, and I mean, and so
Mm-hmm.
the way that you earn trust and you earn respect, you do that by being consistent, by teaching people, giving them something they didn't have before. And so he's teaching them how to ride the speeders. He's saying, I'm going to help you take down the train. All of this I don't think is out of the goodness of his own Boy Scout
Mm-hmm.
heart. I think it's
No.
out of survival and out of him not being dumb and realizing that it's better to have these people as my allies than my enemy, because I ain't getting out of here, you know, by beating my way out.
I
Uh,
also think though that his guard has come down considerably. And like this is a person who has had zero family since his dad was murdered. Um,
let's remember
and
Omega's
so,
out there somewhere.
well, does he know that? We don't know yet. Um, but basically had no family, no real social groups for him to rely on. He was working with thieves and
Mm-hmm.
murderers, and that was it. Those were the people that he associated himself with, and so this is more of a camaraderie than he's probably ever had, where everybody's working together and looking out for one another and helping each other. And again,
Well,
like it's self-interested to your point, but this is also something new for him, and I think like that's what they're trying to convey here as well.
and what's interesting is, and by the way, I agree with everything you said, Aaron, regarding his point of view, where he's coming at it from a point. He knows kind of what he's doing, but it's also how is what he's doing here project outward? I guess that was my point. Is we know that at some point this is all influencing him as well. He's gaining a sense of the tribe. He's getting a sense of the group. He's getting a sense of how to be part of,
Now
with others,
you're 100%
because
correct
he's
there.
not been that
You're
before.
100% correct there because I had, being a band director, I saw that with students. Some of the kids that were quote unquote the worst students in the school, you know, came into band and they found a place where they belonged and where they were accepted and where they could be productive, and they were the best students in my class. Because of those things, they couldn't play their way out of a paper bag, but they tried hard and they worked hard and they belonged. And so you're 100% correct there. I'm just saying, let's pump the brakes on, because we still,
Mhm.
I'm still waiting for they're building us up. They're suckering us into, oh, Boba Fett's changed his ways and he's out for the little guy now. And then the last episode, he's going to do something, shoot somebody right between the eyes and just go back to being that, bad A that, we all thought he was. I'm just saying,
Mhm.
I don't have any reason to say that, but I'm kind of taking these a little bit with a grain of salt. It's maybe I'm just not as trusting as other people, but so
Because
Well,
and it's a good point. Just because I mean we're seeing him help the Tuscans. I mean he clearly is helping the Tuscans, but he's also forming a bond with them regarding their plight and their issues. So he's not doing this just 100% because he's a kind guy. And you wouldn't expect him to do that. He knows what he's doing.
well, let's get back to
By the way,
let's get back to the
just to,
Mandalorian. Oh, go ahead, Fredo.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing more of a Western thing ever than people racing alongside a train and jumping on board while people on the train are trying to shoot them down.
Yeah.
That is
um
like Western 101.
oh, I can't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, it's all right.
so like Boba Fett, we don't know where he's going to end up. Is the point, right? And that's good drama. We don't. We want to think that like he's changed or that he's the hero of this story, but ultimately he may still be a bit of a villain. Um, I think like ultimately with the series, there's a lot of things that I hope they try to achieve and do achieve here. But I think like one of the biggest things is the question of why did you want, of all things, like for yourself, why did you want Jabba's throne? And like
Mm-hmm.
that didn't make a lot of sense to me character wise. I was like, well, he's a bounty hunter. You know, it's like that's how he kept getting dismissed in this episode by people, right? It was like, well, you're just that bounty hunter, right? And well, that was always our impression of him, and so like it was an interesting choice to say, oh, well, he's going to kill Bib Fortuna, and he's going to claim this throne. Um, why? I mean, like again,
Well,
why this specifically? Does he feel wronged? Does he feel he can make a difference in this community? Does
see,
there's a
I
lot.
think I lean towards, you know, I've been getting screwed my entire life. It's time for me to get mine. And
Mm-hmm.
I see Boba Fett as opportunistic. Um, by the way, yeah,
He was
let's.
off world though. By the end of Mandalorian, he had his ship, he had his
That's what
armor.
I'm sorry, but that's what I was going to say
Uh-huh.
earlier. Is that I don't necessarily think that he helped Din get Grogu again out of the kindness of his heart. If anything, we've seen in this first couple episodes is that he is weak and frail, so he has to take a back to bath a couple times a day. It only gets him so far. I think he recognized that he was not going to win that fight against Din Djarin, and so it's like, again, all right, let's play the long game. I'll help you get this
Mm-hmm.
kid. I'll do this part, and then I'll get my armor back, and all will be good. Um, I don't know.
Because one another thing that kind of dawns on me, he clearly knows when we see him at the first episode of season 2 of Mandalorian, he clearly knows where his armor is. Because by this point, Cobb Vanth has been wearing it for a while. Why did he not go get it? Why did he wait until Din claimed it, took it off world? Why did that change the dynamic for him? Because he was living in the desert, wearing Tuscan gear and having a gaffy stick. But then the fact that his armor left Tatooine meant he had to go get it. So we know that there's a reason for that somewhere in here.
By the way, kids watching at home, the people they've been fighting on this train are members of the Pike Syndicate. You saw them first, in the Clone Wars. You saw them in Solo. They were on Kessel. You also saw them in. Were they in the Bad Batch? They weren't in the Bad Batch.
Not this season, but I
Maybe
mean, they
they
might have
maybe
been
they
in the
were.
background. But
Maybe they were. Anyway, but Clone Wars definitely season 7 and obviously earlier seasons of the Clone Wars. So again, part of this crime syndicate that Darth Maul, Darth Maul took the Pikes and the Hutts and Black Sun and Crimson. He created this crime syndicate. That's why I still think we're gonna get a Kira element
cameo.
here. I think Crimson Dawn is going to be, and this is funny. Do you have any spice? What do you mean spice? What's spice? Like I don't know what
Spice was
that is,
strong.
officer. I thought that was potpourri. It's like this was this was just such a funny scene.
Well, this is again, we don't know where this story's going to go. With Kira or whomever might be pulling the leash of the Pikes in this on this planet in this situation, and so there's very much the possibility that this act for him caused retribution,
Hmm.
and we may see more of that. It may have occurred prior to him taking the throne, which is what the part of the point of all of these flashbacks. We may get to that point and see what happens at the end of this particular story, um, or it may just, you know, it may come to roost in the quote unquote future after this, um, after he's already strutting around with his armor and feeling good about himself. But um, yeah, there's a lot of potential tie-in there, and again, I think it sort of hints at this. I think there's a bigger point to why he chose this place, and I think like that's what they're trying to show us, and that's what they're trying to let us know. Again, the Vision Quest, we're going to get that here in a few minutes.
Hmm.
Um, you don't just do that. that's a very very personal spiritual journey to take. And that's not something that you just show up in a tribe and are like, okay, I'm just going to do the thing,
Yeah, but they
because
shoved a
everyone else
lizard
is
up his
doing it.
nose. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
But there's a very deep connection that I sensed that came from that experience, and they forming his own weapon, all of these things that are traditional rites of passage. Um, it's he has more of a connection here, is what I'm trying to get at, and I'm wondering if there's going to be even more reason for him to want to make this place his home, his permanent home, and to try to make it better. Whether he's a good guy or a bad guy or however we want to define any of that, um, I'm interested in finding out more about why he feels so connected to Tatooine now. And I think
Hmm.
there's more than just, oh, there's a power vacuum and he's going to step into it.
Right, because we know that he's getting those Camino flashbacks. So we wonder how that's gonna come into play.
the Tuscans really like wasting water. Just saying.
Part of me was looking at that whole sequence, and I was thinking space western, yes, but I was also thinking like Lawrence of Arabia. Part of me was like Boba of Tatooine, because it's all very similar in nature, just the whole sequence with the train. But again, he's gaining the respect of the Tuscans. he's partnered a deal where, you know, they will now get some sort of payment from the Pikes for crossing the Dune Sea with their Sansana spice,
You know,
and they're stopping all the shooting.
what we also got going on here is a little bit of what was the Kevin Costner movie, Dances with Wolves.
Hmm.
A little bit. You asked, Dave, about
Mhm.
seeing, if we ever see things from the
That's one.
perspective.
Yeah.
That's one. Well, midway through the movie, you get that.
Yeah.
Once there's a lot of similarities here, um, but um, but yeah, it's again, he's earned their trust to now become, you know,
Hmm.
a part of this. Like you said, this very special ceremony. Um, but again, I come back. I was every time we get to a new scene, it's like it goes in a place where I didn't think it was going to go. It's like what, where, what? Okay, um, and it's
Especially the lizard.
I mean, yeah, but it, like I said, it's awesome. But I mean, let's go back to what I think a lot of us were expecting. We're not expecting this for the Book of Boba Fett. But now, as I stop and I think about it, and as they were saying that this was kind of Mandalorian 2.5, again, like we've said many times, it's explaining, you know, why, where, how Boba Fett got into the picture here. So
Right.
it's kind of like, it's in um I won't get that nerdy, but it's like we just have to take an offshoot, and
Hmm.
now the rest of the story is progressing, but we're going to tell this story over here, and then we'll go back into the main line a little bit later. Um, but
Yeah,
I
again,
did
kind of like
no
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, just no, I was gonna say, we know where the story with the Tuscan ends. It ends with him staring at that dune, seeing that Din Djarin driving off with his armor, and him turning around, walking towards the camera. So in some ways, we know where the story with the Tuscans goes because he's got to be there at that moment. But what's going to be interesting is how this ties into the forward storyline that we're following with him trying to lay claim to Java's throne and Mos Espa.
Apparently, the red eyes in the tree are Jawas. That's what it kind of looked like in the art at the end of the episode.
Hmm.
Whether or not this is an actual tree or he's just tripping. I guess he does come
No,
back
because
with a
he comes back with
branch.
a branch.
That's right.
It does.
Yeah. Although at the same time, I'm also like, is this kind of like when Homer Simpson had the hottest pepper ever? And he goes to that Vision Quest.
I found this
It's good.
shot here where young Boba is watching Slave One fly off Camino. Um, that's
And then,
obviously very telling. Dad's gone away on another mission. So he had a
mhm.
dad, but he didn't really know his dad because dad was
And then
always
he was
gone.
taken.
So now
Yeah.
cue up Cats in the Cradle, you know. But
No, yeah, that's. I think we verbalized that, Kate and I, when we were watching this. It's like
Mhm.
he didn't
But
really
it's
have
also
a
it's.
dad. The dad was gone. Like
Mhm.
technically had a dad, but the guy was off, killing people all the time. You never got to see him. He was on his own.
But and it's also that's how that ties into the other scenes because we're seeing him from the point of view of him trapped. He sees the helmet of his dad with his head somewhere, but then he's also trapped inside the Sarlacc pit, getting squeezed out and digested, and him struggling to stay alive. So it kind of puts it into a perspective where he's always felt alone and kind of trapped and unable to kind of do anything but what he's been stuck as
so
trapped within the armor, trapped as Django's kid.
we are the Who Dat Jedi podcast. So let's get into a little bit of New Orleans here for a second, because we've been talking about the historical references, and understanding the Native American culture and things like that. Take this to present day, and the little amount of time that we take to understand our neighbors and understand who the people are in our neighborhood, and New Orleans is one of those things where it's it's very touristy to come down and say, oh, look at the people in their colorful outfits, dancing around on Mardi Gras Day. And it's like, well, let me tell you about the Mardi Gras Indians.
Mm-hmm.
and why, why they do the things they do, how they put these suits together, and why they're doing this. Let's talk about, the different traditions, musically, or just the different traditions culturally here or throughout the country. And that's, I mean, and I think a bigger thing is being said in the, if I, maybe I'm getting way too artsy fartsy, but it's like, hey kids, if you take the time to get to know how the other cultures around you work, then there will be greater acceptance, and you'll feel like you fit in more, and you know, you'll have a sense of community. You won't be as
Well,
isolated.
it goes to the idea of cultural appropriation and versus acceptance of a culture that's always being waged and discussed, not just in New Orleans, but around the globe. The idea of when are you part of the tribe versus when are you just taking the tribe's trappings and culture and traditions and just putting it on without recognizing the value and importance. Boba, we've seen in these two chapters this journey from being a character who was on the outside, not being accepted, dressed as one of their own, trained as one of the Tuscans, but no, consider one of the Tuscans, because he's not only shown his value to the Tuscans, but also because he's taken the time to learn about them. You know,
The the one thing that comes to mind for me, Aaron, about what you're talking about is this homogenization of our culture, and how, like, every city in America ends up looking like every other city in America, because, like, we've got the Chipotle next to the Starbucks, next to the other thing, and it just, we lose something,
Mm-hmm.
as a culture, when it's all the same everywhere. And um again, that's probably not the larger point that they were necessarily trying to make here, but it is something that occurs to me as well, which is just like, yeah, no, like, look at this, right? This example with the brandishing of the weapon, and we're going to help you create this amazing tool that will help you survive ultimately. And it's there's this tradition in making it, just the making of it. Only the one guy knows how to do this, and he has to pass that along to whomever comes after him, so that that trade won't die, so that their whole tribe won't die. um it's important on that level, just from a basic survival level. But, like, above and beyond that, it is important to not lose these things. um
mhm.
and I think, like, again, it's a lovely sentiment, to see him, like, here trying to learn this, learn more. But they showed him how to use the weapon earlier, and now he's learning how to craft one. um
Well, and it is very Jedi-like, by the way. I
Mhm.
mean,
mhm,
So I was
he's
thinking,
making his own lightsaber right now, is what it is. It's like, so
mhm.
the Tuscans and the Jedi are not too different from one another.
which makes me wonder if we'll see more Tuscan, stuff with Obi-Wan, because he's also been running around these sands, for quite a while. But also just because that idea of that, there's always been historically a relationship between warrior peoples and their weapons. The connection that's bonded, that's established that, okay, this, you're part of the weapon's part of you. You can't just simply separate the two. That's why you have to make your own, so to speak. But also thinking about it in terms of New Orleans, I was just thinking of all the Mardi Gras Indian tribes and how they spend all year with thread and needle, working all year for a suit that only see the light of day once,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's something that passed down generationally. Like, you don't just go and pay a fee to go attend a course somewhere and you get to learn how to do it. No, you have to be committed, because there's a value that goes beyond just the tools and the techniques that you're learning. There's a value that's intrinsic to the existence of the thing that goes beyond it.
It's
And
part
unless
of
you
the culture.
and if you don't recognize that, you cannot have access to it.
Now, again, as as much as like I said, I enjoyed this episode, and I said that I am whelmed. And I think the only reason why I'm not like over the moon and a little concerned is that, like I said, what we're getting, it's 6 episodes that we're getting,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we're a third of the way through, and we still don't really have an inkling of where this story is going. Now, if it's going to be just a bunch of vignettes of how I became a Tuscan, I mean, cool, but I mean, it seems like they're trying to, with with the promos and with the stuff at the beginning of the episode, it seems like we're trying to set up, in any book you would have a clear protagonist, antagonist, and a motivation, or at least a hint of the motivation, for where we're going to be going. And I don't see that yet. And I just hope this doesn't get into what we've had in previous series where it's like the last episode has got to be a lot of hurry up to get to the payoff. You know what I
Hurry
mean?
up and finally put the pieces together. Like if you think like if his ultimate goal is not become Daimyo of Mos Espa, it's I want to get revenge on somebody, or I want to, free whoever, and that doesn't get explicitly stated by next episode. Do you think you're worried that they're playing the cards too close to the chest and we're not gonna get to connect emotionally with it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like I said, in the previous series, whether it had been some of the Marvel ones or it just seems like there's a we build up for about 5 episodes, and then the last episode it's like, oh crap, we got to get all this. It's like you've realized that the project's due tomorrow, and you got to get all this stuff in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's so I don't know, and I know that they're all getting comfortable with and playing with this new Disney Plus,
Format.
scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, it'll be interesting at the end of all this. I might be totally proven wrong, and like I said, going back and watching all 6 episodes one after another and saying, all right, yeah, there's a good flow here. Right now,
Because
it just makes me uncomfortable. Like,
Because speaking of flow, I know that one of the criticisms that some people had was the fact that episode one was only 38 minutes and everybody was so disappointed in it. This one, everybody just fell over the moon, but it was 52 minutes. So makes you wonder why the cuts are happening, where they're happening. And we know that Disney Plus has never been one for everything's got to be 40 minutes, to put
but
it
then
simple.
what
They're
is
willing to go, but why are they cutting the way they're cutting? Why, you know,
But what I need somebody just to sit down next to me and just say, just shut up, enjoy the story. Because again, it's like we had to wait years upon years for new Star Wars stuff. It's like somebody's telling you a story, Aaron, just sit down, shut up, and just enjoy.
Just
And
Dave,
shut up and enjoy the story.
just send me a text next Wednesday. Say,
Okay.
just
Okay,
shut
I'll
up and
do that.
enjoy.
6 in the morning, 6 in the morning.
But you
Okay,
know what?
Aaron,
But
shut
you know
up
what
and
I
enjoy.
mean. And I think it's because everybody's got a podcast. I mean, we have a podcast. Everybody's on YouTube. It's like everybody's, so we've got to have some hot take and something to talk about. Where I'm getting better, and I don't think that my concern is unwarranted,
No, it's
because
not.
it is kind of like it feels like I'm watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. With all due respect,
But
it's like, wow, okay, can we get up the mountain a little bit quicker? But anyway,
I don't feel that way at all, but I also take your point, which is just like, well, okay, there's only 6 episodes, and now we've burned through 2 of them, and so are they going to be able to tell the story they want to tell? And I'm still very hopeful and optimistic because of what I've seen, because I've enjoyed what I've seen. I really like this show so far. I think
mhm.
I think like the biggest thing that like struck me the other day when I was thinking about it was just that I've been kind of burned out on all the Marvel stuff, and I haven't been super interested in continuing to consume it in the same way that I had been before, where I was invested. I got to go to every movie and I've got to watch all of it, and I think it's just a little bit of burnout because we got all these shows. We had a
Well, the
few movies.
movies.
Yeah, I had a few movies this year, and I've got like 4, I think, scheduled for next year, along with a few more shows. And I think there's like, gosh, we've talked about this and we've gone back and forth about how Star Wars can kind of leave you thirsting in the desert for more content, but like right now,
Well, it's
I'm happy about that.
it's tricky. It's like the band that has a gig at the same time every week and never stops. Um, it's not as much of an event as the band that comes to town once a month, and it's like this band's in town. You know what I mean? And that's what, like you talk about with the Marvel and with Star Wars, that is my concern, is that it's going to become, you know, it just we're just gonna get lost in all the stuff, and it's like I need a little bit of a break. You know, you're smothering me, you know, Star Wars. But however, I want to ask you if
but
you
they
could,
haven't been is the point. Like,
well,
like
but it's going to get that way. Heads up in 2022, 2023, it's going to ramp up. Now, not to the Marvel extent. Marvel is like they're jacked up on juice and doing all sorts of things. But let me ask you this: if and I want you to be and give me the most honest answer you can. But if you could get in the DeLorean and go back, you know, a few months when you saw the first Book of Boba Fett trailer and tell, you know, your past self, hey, this is what the first 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett is. What do you think your previous self's reaction would be?
Okay.
What'd you say,
I
Fredo?
mean, I said okay because realistically, I still don't know that we know. Like I said, we don't know exactly where we're going. I've liked what I've seen, and I've enjoyed it, and it's been an interesting and fun journey. So I'm down with whatever comes next. But I'm not necessarily, it's not like I'm like, oh, really, that's what it's about. No, I wouldn't be feel disappointed with it because I'm not. I'm enjoying it. But I'm also going like, okay, can you tell me more? And that's the one thing I've noticed that I'm liking about it
All
is that
right, let's take
the episode ends, I'm happy. I want more.
let's take the DeLorean back even further. Let's take the DeLorean back to 1987, Fredo, and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, guess what? There's going to be a 6 episodes that's just going to focus only on Boba Fett, just Boba Fett, and you're going to get 6 episodes. And here's what the first 2 episodes are.
For first of all my thoughts would have been in Spanish because I didn't know English at the time. Simple one. But two, now I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's again, that 10-year-old me would have been like freaking out, just like, that's so cool. I want to see more. I want to see more.
I think you're
Because
so full
that's,
of crap. I think you're so full of crap.
oh, no.
I think. How old were you in 1987?
10.
10. All right. So you would have said,
10.
what? That's what the first
Yes.
2 episodes of the Boba Fett show is going to be about. It's not going to be about him going whomping and a whooping and shooting everybody down. He's going to be learning how to fight with a gaffy stick.
You mean to tell me you're getting one shooter in the middle of town. You're getting one massive train chase sequence. You're getting at least one
Man,
monster
I would sleep
fight.
so much.
So
I would sleep so much better if I was more like you, Fredo. I would. You're at Zen, and I'm not even to Bodhisattva yet. So
I can give you a real life example, which is my children who are watching it with me, and they really like it. You know,
yeah,
and again, there are those elements of Star Wars, the Star Warsy things that are there, the action beats and the mythos and the spirituality and you know, the kind of that morality that is very clear. Like those are the good guys, those are the bad guys. I understand this, and they flipped it here, which is so clever, but they needed to. I needed to see something like this, I think.
and to your point, I'm saying that, you know, I would have like, really, that's what the first 2 episodes are going to be. That's what they had to do with Boba Fett because everybody was expecting, you know, a certain thing. You know, present company excluded, because you guys are on a much different plane apparently than the rest of us. But, you know, everybody was expecting, you know, a certain thing. And I think that's why some people are just hopping mad
But you know,
and
but you
being
know what?
hypercritical of it. But this is exactly what they had to do. It's kind of like it's like the band who it's U2 doing Zooropa.
Mhm.
It's
But you
like
know what? It's related to the same issue that everybody had with Luke and the Last Jedi. If you hadn't gotten The Force Awakens and didn't know anything, and you just got dropped into the Last Jedi, I can understand why people got upset with the Luke Skywalker that they got. But the fact you got The Force Awakens, you knew that things went bad, you knew that it all went to McClunky and backwards. The only place where Luke could be is where he was in Last Jedi.
yeah.
Having gotten Mandalorian season 2 and seen the Boba Fett that we got there, it totally makes sense why we're getting this Boba Fett in this series.
Oh, just
Because we're not going to get the, you know, McClunky bad bounty hunter because he's not that anymore. That's been stripped from him.
just wait until we get to the last episode and Boba Fett cries.
Now you're just trying to get people riled up there.
And it'll close with Max Rebo doing When Doves Cry.
But I will say, this episode, the only thing I want now after seeing this episode is I want to see more of that Wookiee. Because that was that costume was so good, and whoever was acting under that, I mean, just the looks were just so good.
Yeah,
and like I said, I mean, and
there's
the thing
promise in that.
And like I said, the thing that's frustrating, however, is that we see those great, huts. The time that they spent all their money on the huts, and then they're like came up with the claymation, centaur dude that we fought in the last, in the first episode. It's like, so it's just interesting where there is a quality difference from here to there.
But I like the overall quality, though, to that point. And this is what whenever you put me on the spot and you say, oh, what do you want from this series? Or what do you want from this movie or that, and I'm like, I want something I haven't seen before. And I want a standard of quality in terms of how it's shot and how the music and the acting and everything else. It needs to be top notch, and this is top notch so far. I mean, like, again, you can pick in your nits here and there, but when you were talking about Jabba's palace, I'm like, yeah, it's perfect. I got no complaints about that. I got no complaints about Tatooine. It feels and looks like Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
It just,
I love the flower shots of Mos Espa. Every time we see them,
I
love that shot.
Oh, so much better than the stuff we got from the special editions, and it looks like a real friggin' city.
Now let's again, let's not drag the special editions too much through the mud, because you're dealing with, that's like, complaining of that, comparing your we're streaming music now. We don't even load music on anything anymore versus your Walkman from 1985. But and it is clear what George Lucas was doing, and that ILM and Lucasfilm recognized what George Lucas was doing with the special editions and with the prequels. That was all about technology R&D. That was all about movie making technology R&D. I mean, they could have just made put those stories into a book, and that would have been fine. We would have learned what the history, what came before A New Hope, but it was all about
like
R&D.
The Book of Boba Fett, perhaps.
That's what they're doing now. They're laying the groundwork for the next generation of these stories.
So, all right, well, let's totally shift gears as we wrap up. This is, like I said, F the Falcons week, and we got the Falcons on Sunday, and at the same time the 49ers are playing the Rams, and if the 49ers lose and we win, we are in the playoffs. Do you think this is going to happen?
Well, Vegas thinks it's going to happen because the Saints are favored. The Saints are favored, and the Rams are favored. So
I would love for us to get in the playoffs and do two things. I don't even want us to get to a Super Bowl. I don't care if we get to the Super Bowl or not. I want to do two things. I want to play the Rams because if we were to get in the playoffs, we'd probably be playing the Rams the first game.
We would.
And I want to beat them. I want to get back at them. Then I want the next game to be against the Bucks, and I want to beat them. And then we can all just leave. I mean, this is revenge time for me because that's all I want. That's all I want.
Well, unfortunately, we wouldn't play Tampa Bay unless we're playing in the NFC Championship game. Because and I do think we will beat Atlanta. I do think the Rams will beat the 49ers because if they don't, they may not even end up as the second seed. They may end up the fifth seed. But if we beat the Rams as the lowest seed, we would have to go to Green Bay the next week. Because the only place we can slide into is the seventh, and lowest always has to go to the highest. So
well, then I guess
we would have to go.
Then I guess
go.
I guess this just has to be Major League. We're just going to have to, win the whole effing thing, But yeah,
which would be the greatest thing ever seen. Because I don't think even I can't think of anything that would equate to it. It'd be the most improbable thing in sports, professional sports.
Somebody said, maybe it was, I can't remember where I heard it. Maybe it was Saints Happy Hour podcast or one of the journalists tweeted it, said, Sean Payton is one game away from Coach of the Year, given all the things that we have gone through and what he, how many quarterbacks, how many offensive lines, I mean, that's why I said, that's why the Patriots beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl was not necessarily player talent, with all due respect. The coaches were able to adapt on the fly and, make things work. So Sean is just, he's probably going to drink heavily after this season.
He needs a month off on vacation. But actually, I was thinking, like in terms of improbable things, the only other thing that would compare to the Saints somehow, some way winning the Super Bowl this season is back about 6 years ago in the Premier League, a team that was just almost relegated, means they just escaped falling to the lower division, came up and won the title the next year, which was, I believe the odds were either 501 or 5,000 to 1. And it was the kind of thing where you go, this will never, ever happen again in my lifetime. So seeing it again just 6 years later, I'll be like, because I'd love to see what the odds would be on the Saints winning the Super Bowl should they make the playoffs. Because it's not going to be any high number.
Defenses win championships, and yeah.
It's not going to happen, but
no, I mean, this is a pipe. This is a pipe dream. Like I said, that's why I said I want two things. If I can just take down the Rams, then that's fine. If I can just take down the Bucks, that's fine. I do want to see the team get into the playoffs and make a little bit of noise.
That's kind of been my ceiling. My ceiling has always been, given everything that's happened, make the playoffs and win a game. And anything beyond that is just like, okay, well,
but first,
following week we go to Green Bay and we get the doors blown off of us.
But first, let's just beat the Falcons. Let's just beat the Falcons, and everybody. I know we're all going to be checking the Rams 49ers score, but just root on your Saints. That's it. Don't worry about the other stuff.
Let's make Thomas Morstead work a lot.
I want to block his punt too. That'd be fun. But anyway, all right. Well, thanks for listening to us for the second episode of Book of Boba Fett. You can remember, just hit us up on Twitter and on Facebook and let us know what you thought of the episode, how you're digging it so far. But until then, again, happy Carnival to everybody. And we will say who dat.
Who dat?
And beat the Dirty Birds. We'll see y'all later.
McConkey.